Hey everyone, today's reading is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, and the verses that stood out to me today were verses 1 through 5. So I'll go ahead and read them. Starting in verse 1, we want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means, of their own accord, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. And this, not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then by the will of God to us. In explaining this, Paul, he's writing this letter to the church at Corinth. And he's telling the church about these other churches in the area of Macedonia. Now, these churches, according to Scripture, they were going through affliction. They had extreme poverty. But Paul points out that they were overflowing in generosity. He says that they gave according to their means, but then on top of it, they gave sacrificially. And it says in verse 4 that the churches were begging to be a part of this mission of reaching people for Jesus. They wanted to give abundantly because they wanted to be a part of this mission. And Paul says that they gave more than they could ever expect in verse 5. And then he says this. He talks about how they got to a heart of giving. And he points out that these churches first gave themselves to the Lord. So these churches, these individuals at these churches made a decision that they were going to give their whole selves to God. Whatever they had, they wanted to give it to the Lord. And then Scripture says that the will of God caused them to move and to give. So in applying this, I want to challenge myself and I want to challenge you to give abundantly, to listen to the Lord when he says, give to something. And what a tremendous blessing this is, and what a tremendous testimony this is for a church that didn't have very much. They had a heart for the Lord, and they had a heart for reaching the lost for Christ. So can I challenge you today to open up your hearts, to give to whatever God asks you to. And I hope that these verses encourage you to dive deeper into Scripture.